We're recording this on Thursday, the 2nd of April. Yesterday, a slew of price changes came in, including the minimum wage, state pension both rose, and the prescription costs in England have been frozen. I want to start on the minimum wage rises. So what do you think this means for people and businesses, both those on minimum wage and then businesses that employ minimum wage workers?
Look, in one respect, the minimum wage going up is a fantastic idea, because especially youngsters, if you're over 21, you're going to get more take-home pay. The negative of this is, if we just take hospitality as a key example, businesses cannot afford this rise. We had the NI increases as well. I mean, if you think of local pubs, they're just hemorrhaging money everywhere. And my worry is, there's young people, let's say they're doing their A-levels or they're going to university or whatever. There's no part-time jobs for them to do. They can't get their foothold into work because the jobs aren't there. And even if there are the jobs there, you've got middle-aged people working in those jobs, whereas years ago they wouldn't be doing that. The youngsters would have been taking those jobs. So it kind of, yes, it's a great thing, and the low pay commission have put it up again, but it's not sustainable. It really isn't. And yeah, I mean, it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, because where are these jobs? Or even if they're lucky enough to get a job, then the hours are cut back, because, rather than having, I don't know, let's say 30 hours a week, the local pub will say, right, well, I can only afford to give you 2 shifts this week, or the landlord himself is doing more of the work. You'll get pub managers, for example, that are doing 60, 70, 80 hours a week because they can't afford to staff the pub.
But everything is getting more expensive. We're going through a period of inflation again. If you're in work, your pay is being eroded by inflation, because wages aren't rising as quickly as the cost of goods are going up. So if you are on minimum wage, you would have seen even more of your of the money being eroded, because you've got even less discretionary spending. So surely for these people at the bottom, it's less about actually it being a decision and more about it being a necessity, because you've got to be able to live.
Yeah. But I mean, we'll probably get onto it in a minute, but the raft of rises, council tax, the gas and electric has gone up, water rates. I mean, everything. I mean, I have a spreadsheet here at home, and I update it. I've updated it for this month because of the new things, and suddenly I think my bills, before I put even a loaf of bread in my mouth, I'm another £150. What the hell? I mean, I know, for example, my pay's not going up by that. It's and I don't know, and I think I do okay. I'm not like on the breadline, but what about the people who are literally on the breadline? And you wonder why, the food banks are filling up, or people are nicking, they're shoplifting, not because to feed a drug habit, then the shoplifting out of necessity.
The other thing that's gone up has been the state pension, and that's driven by the triple lock. And I've got it on relatively good authority that Reform, as of today, are going to announce that they'll keep the triple lock if they're in power.
Yeah.
How can it be justified for the state pension to rise 4.8% when the national living wage goes up by 4%?
Yeah.
And inflation is going to be at, potentially 5-6%. So pensioners who are not in work are going to be, in percentage terms, better off than people in work. How can that be justified? And do you think the triple lock can exist in the way that it has done for the years until now?
The reason it will continue is because pensioners are the only people who vote in the main, and Labour, Tories, Reform, Liberal Democrats probably. No one wants to burst that bubble and say, right, we're taking it back because or we're cutting it, because they will vote them out of power. Now, someone needs to be brave and say, listen, do you know what? This is not sustainable. This can't continue. And it's creating a generational divide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't buy this narrative that there are loads of poor pensioners. Nah, maybe there was 20 years ago. But with all this continuous triple lock, there's not many poor ones left.
One in 4 pensioners is a millionaire.
There we are. You know, and it brings us back to the point we just said a minute ago. There are no jobs for the kids. They're not only are there no jobs for them, that they can't even get a foothold into work. Starting out their careers, and then you got the student loans crisis as well, and you just think, how are they ever going to afford a mortgage deposit? How are they? It's only if this wealth kind of like trickles down. And we might start seeing that stop and slow down because, let's face it, a lot of these really rich pensioners are probably going on cruises all the time. They'll spend it. They're not going to want to give it to their necessarily pass it down to generations.
Well, the problem is as well is that they won't pass it down to the generation who actually needs it, because the generation is going to need it realistically is going to be my children, because I'm already in work and I'm on the property ladder, or they're going to pass it down to a generation of people in their 40s who are getting on the property ladder far too late.
Exactly.
I have a couple of solutions that I would give to the government. I think the triple lock should be a mean of the because it's CPI, inflation, and what's the other? But anyway, the 3 metrics I use make it a mean, not the top one. I think that feels unfair. That would then knock it back more in line with wage growth, which again is a fairer thing to do. So it's not scrapping the triple lock, but it's amending it. I think the other thing that I would also do is allow pensioners to essentially waive their state pension and either donate it to charity with gift aid and or be able to essentially waive it in return for tax relief on drawing down their private pension, because if they don't need their state pension, they'll and then the other thing I do is have some kind of scheme in place. I'm not sure how this would work, but stamp duty relief for pensioners who downsize their house. So if they, let's say, move from a 900 square foot house to a 600 square foot house, or reduce the number of bedrooms they've got, for example, they then get stamp duty relief or inheritance tax relief, whatever that may be. Because the other issue that we have in this country is housing. And it isn't that we have a shortage of housing, actually. I know we need to build more housing and more affordable housing, but we have a supply issue with housing, which is there are lots of houses being occupied by too few people. For example, my grandmother is 99. She lives in a 3-bedroom house in a commuter town in Bedfordshire, where you can get into London in 35 minutes. Now, she's been in the house for 60 odd years, but if there were incentives to allow people maybe in their 70s, when they're a bit more active to downsize, that would then relieve some of the issues we've got with housing, and therefore, and I think the only way you do this is by incentivizing these people.
But then the issue we have is that every government, it's short-termism. There's no joined up 20-year plan. Then or another government comes in and they we don't want that, we'll scrap that. So that's what there's no like long term, and I don't mean we become a communist state and have but the point is we do need longer term thinking. Whether it becomes a kind of a commission or something to sort these problems out, because structurally nothing is going to happen, because every 5-year term we're just changing the team,
and it feels like we tinker around the edges, particularly with things like pension reform. I think the Labour government had an opportunity in its first year, because it has a massive majority. People seem to forget that Labour have a huge majority in Parliament. They can push through things. I think one of the things that Labour have done really badly is communicate some of the traditional good Labour stuff that they have brought through. I think their comms is dreadful. But they could have done, and I thought Torsten Bell, being pension minister and being quite an outspoken pension minister, was going to really bring in some kind of sweeping pension reforms. And the only real thing that appears to have happened is changes to private pension and kind of allocation to, which is it entirely the wrong thing we should be focusing on. It's the
look at the changes to salary sacrifice. I mean,
yeah.
that's a disaster. I mean, why would you cut that back? That's one thing that people can actually, if they have got the spare money, that they can, throw it into their pension. Why would you limit that?
That for me is the sums up where this Labour government seems to think wealth is.
Yeah.
Because I think they seem to think anyone on over, let's call it 60 grand, is extraordinarily wealthy and has all this spare money, and actually the much of the wealth is kind of tied up in older people, right now, in assets as well. The thing that we need to be doing, and I don't believe there's going to be a state pension in the way that it is now when I get to state pension age. And also there's such a misconception. People think they pay into a pension. It's like, no, you're not. You're literally paying the current pensioners through your NI. It's not a sovereign wealth fund. That's a complete other topic. But it's this it's this idea that earners, and particularly kind of earners in that kind of top 10%, are astronomically wealthy, and they're just not. I'm not saying I'm not saying that people on 60 grand are having a worse time than people on minimum wage, because that's absolutely not what I'm saying. But there is not this massive kind of pot of spare money that the working middle class seems to have.
But we have another problem, you see, with the political class, is if you think back to maybe 20 years ago, whatever, you might have trade unionists who become MPs. We've had coal miners, firemen, doctors. You've kind of real people who are MPs who've had real careers before they knock on people's doors and ask for votes. Whereas now we've got professional politicians. For example, they go and do their politics degree. Then they carry a bag for an MP. Then they get a safe seat. Or, like Torsten Bell or whatever, you basically work for a think tank. Now, I'm going to disparage him, but at the end of the day, that's not really real work in my eyes. I mean, you don't know what it's like to actually earn real money, if that makes sense. I really have a problem with it, because they don't understand real people's concerns. This political class is, I bet half of them, if you ask them how much is a loaf of bread, they wouldn't know the answer. And that's the old thing. Oh yeah, asking David Cameron what much is a pint of milk or whatever. They're not living in the real world, And when they go around and once every 5 years and they knock on your door, can I have your vote? That's the only time they talk to real people. A lot of them,
My worry is, though, I do half agree, but I think there's some really good constituency MPs who are career politicians. I'm not tarring them all with the same brush. There are a few pretty good ones, ones that you notice a good constituency MP is one that doesn't go for a promotion. They're just happy looking after their constituents, and they get their salary. They're dedicated, hardworking. They have enough surgeries, for their constituents. They get things done. They're not trying to climb the greasy pole. No. They don't want to be a cabinet minister and all that sort of stuff. The worry I have with all these people wanting, people who've had careers beforehand, and this is my worry with the political class at the minute, with Trump and with reform, is that these people who apparently have been to work and made money and run businesses and then seem to be trusted with money in general. And these people are undoubtedly rich, successful entrepreneurs that have made it their life's goal to make as much money for themselves as possible. Why do we then think that they are then going to be the people who are going to bring in decent pension reform, for people who need help at the bottom? They are going to be successful in lining their own pockets. And Nigel Farage is
by keeping the people at the bottom down. That's the general kind of gist of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I don't think that MPs should be able to hold second jobs. I also, this is very unpopular. Pay MPs considerably more, give them a considerably larger pension, and say you can't go and work in the private sector after government.
Exactly.
That would be kind of my. I mean, Liz Truss is paid £115,000 a year out of the taxpayers' fund to go to America and say that we should have the right to bear arms. I mean, these people are lunatics. Ran over. There was some figures that came out last week. Consumer confidence has hit a 28-month low. So a report from YouGov and the CEBR show that personal finance outlooks have plummeted to their lowest level since December 2023. And it's fallen 9.4 points for the next 12 months, meaning that people feel that stagnant wages and rapidly rising energy costs, while they're not being protected by an energy cap, is meaning that consumer confidence is at its lowest level for over 2 years. Martin, what do we do to increase consumer confidence? Can anything be done?
I don't think so, because people are feeling poorer. They are just, they're going out less, or if they're going out, they're going to a pub. They're not going to go. They'll go to Witherspoons because it's cheaper, or rather than well, let's stay in tonight, or well, we can't really go out. Yeah, we'll stay in, or do we need that big purchase? No, we don't. We're just not gonna. They're cutting back everywhere. I mean, look at the rise of the discount supermarkets. I'm sure Waitrose is probably under a bit of pressure, or maybe the people who've got the money will still shop at Waitrose. But there is this whole trading down situation going on. And if you've got less money in your pocket, you're not going to spend. And it's the whole idea of growing the economy is always fueled on people spending in the high street, And if people are spending less, then there's less. The knock-on effect is there's shop closures, there's no jobs. I mean, look at all the retail jobs that have been decimated. Again, we're back to the original comment about youngsters getting employment, Saturday jobs, all of that. There's less, if there's less people spending in the economy, then shops will close, jobs will be lost, then there's no income tax being paid. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So unless the government, and I don't know what they can do, well, actually, I do know what they could probably do. They could probably, cut that minimum wage and reverse the NI stuff. I mean, there's things that they could probably do, but they don't want to do it. So, yeah, we need to get people spending again, but not spending on credit. They've got to have disposable income to be able to spend. And I don't mean recklessly spending on credit or going into their overdrafts. But until we get people to feel better about spending, then the economy is not going to grow.
Speaking about credit, actually, because I think that's an interesting point. There's more cars on finance than there ever has been in this country, and it's a growing sector. And do you think that one of the issues that we have is that there is too much consumer financed consumer goods, where once upon a time people save up, buy a car, and then every month there's a couple of £100 disposable income that they use to go out and get takeaways? Now so much of people's budgets is already allocated to things they already have because they've been put on credit. I was chatting to my brother-in-law about this. They live in Kettering, and he was telling me, goes down the pub with some lads, and they've had to cut back because they've got a sofa on credit.
Yeah.
Or
they're doing like this Klarna, like you can pay it in 3 installments. Well, no, hang on a minute. What about just actually paying it all in one go? I mean, why would you then saddle yourself with? Yeah, it's like the old days when you had hire purchase. It's kind of, that's all it is. It's just a fancy name for it.
Do you think this is do you think this is an issue? Do you think we need to maybe do a bit more financial education to get people back on budget?
I think so. I mean, why financial education isn't properly taught in schools? And I know there's lots of they're going to bring stuff in and all the rest of it, but kids need to know about overdrafts, mortgage rates, why a credit card is a bad thing, even stuff like, well, actually, you need to get a credit score. And that's the perverse thing about credit scores, is actually if you don't have any debt, if you never borrowed anything, your credit score's in the toilet. So until you start borrowing, it's a weird one. I don't quite understand. If you've never borrowed anything in your life, you've probably got a credit score of 0, which is no use. But until you start actually having credit cards and borrowing, then your rating goes up. So it's a really I can never understand that, even though I know people from experience. But like, I've never understood you need to have credit in order to get a really good score. I think it's kind of wrong, but I'm not an expert on it. But that's what I think. But in other words, basically, kids need the groundings in financial education, which will set them up for life. Even explaining to them why paying into a pension from an early age is important, and things like that. And how to manage their finances.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is exactly why we're sat here now. To try and impart some knowledge. And one of the things, I mean, I'm very fortunate in my job, and my day job in PR. I work with lots of financial service companies. I can help them put content out. And one of the pieces we put out was how much money you would need to put into whether it be a SIP or just an average market returning fund every year until 65 to have £1 million.
Yeah.
And it's like from birth, it's like £32.07 a month. So it's a phone contract, probably less than a phone contract. And it's the idea of going, well, this stuff is actually attainable, but it takes time. But the thing is that if you can do that, particularly because this is why teaching about money kind of started, because of all the lessons I wanted to teach my son because of all the screw ups I made. And I think by knowing stuff like that, I mean, now I make sure that I put money into his junior ISA.
Yeah.
By the time he hits 18, he will have a pot of money that my job then is going to be like, just leave it, because you will, if you don't touch it, if you just keep putting a small amount of money into it every single month, you will be laughing. You'll be able to retire sooner. And then you'll have that freedom. My worst nightmare would be it gets blown on nights out in uni.
Exactly.
But one of the things that obviously you talk about a lot is the role of cash within society, and I think there's the cash for transactions is declining. It was 12% of all transactions in 2023. 2024 that fell to 9%. Why are you concerned about this fall of cash transactions?
Well, I'll turn the question on its head slightly. So the concern, it really boils down to cash acceptance. So I'm quite regularly in central London, obviously, meeting financial clients, and there's a stretch of road in Cannon Street. There is a stretch of roughly 5 or 6 fast food coffee chain businesses, like people like Joe and the Juice and other few. They're all card only. So if I was going out for lunch and I had £20 on me, well, good luck getting for 20 quid, but no, so I could be walking around for days. I can't spend it. So think of it this way: why would I? Now I do, but why would I take out £20 in my wallet for lunch if I can't spend it? And I often talk to people, and they say, "Oh, Martin, I've still got a tenner in my wallet. I haven't spent it for weeks." Well, why not? Because chances are, everywhere they go, it's card only, card only, card only, tap, tap, tap. But personally, that is not good. And I've often called people just to boycott these places. And but in the same token, if you go to a place and they only accept cash, well, then you know what? There should be the option to pay with both. So am I worried about the decline? Well, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you can't spend your cash, are you going to go to the ATM and take it out? Probably not. Unless you, like I do, I don't force myself. And again, it brings it back to budgeting. So if I'm going out for the night, I take out £50 out of the ATM. Next morning, handful of change, or I might have a tenner left. Oh, that's handy. Didn't go through all that last night. That's good. Whereas if I go out and I've run out of money or didn't take any money out and I'm tapping away, chances are I've probably spent about 65 quid, £70. I don't know. You break into a cold sweat when you're looking at the banking app going like, how much did I spend last night? What happened there? So the beauty, and this is for the kids, the beauty of cash is it's a fantastic way of budgeting and just slowing down the transaction. Do I really need this? Or I've often done it in the pub, where they'll thrust the card machine at you. And I go, so now how much is that? And they go, oh, it's oh, and then you go, right, oh, it's £7, 10 pence or something. Okay, right. And you give them a tenner. I go, do you want the 10 pence? And then they have like a blind panic because they don't understand. What do you mean the 10 pence? They don't, because they're not used to the arithmetic. They're in a shock. They go, what the hell is this? They don't understand. And you think, dear God, and this is the youngsters who are not used to dealing with cash. They don't understand it. And I give you another example. So at my golf club in Mitcham, we've got lots of junior members, and within Mitcham, so obviously we take cash and we have like a sort of club card that you use. So you actually load money onto it and then you transact. So they have a minimum transaction is a £5. So this young lad, bag of crisps and a can of Coke, and it came to, I don't know, call it £3.50. So the barmaid said, I'll have to charge you £5 and I'll give you back the £2.50 or whatever it was. I was standing there watching this, right? So anyway, so he's handed a debit card over. She's giving back, let's say, £2.50. He didn't know what it was. On my children's life, this young boy didn't know what money was. He went, what is that? And she's gone, that's your change. She goes, what's that? And the kid was about 10 years of age. What do you mean, what is that? What a shocking state of affairs that a child doesn't know what money is. I mean, just think about that for a moment. I mean, it's just, yeah.
I see a lot of, because I post these clips from this podcast and news stories on TikTok, and a lot of people on TikTok have done cash stuffing.
Yeah.
So you buy these binders and it has an amount of cash in a wallet, and you put that amount in, and then it saves to a goal, £1,000. I've seen $10,000 ones anyway, because obviously in America it's a lot easier because they've got a $1 bill, so it's easy to
I still remember the pound notes, actually. Yeah, but I'm older than you, so yeah.
But bringing this back to budgeting, because I did it at uni. I take out 30 quid and leave my card at home. You take your ID and your cash out, and that was it. When it comes to saving, lots of people are turning back to cash to do that because there's a tactile, tangible element to seeing the money in your hand. Do you think that's really important to people when they're trying to get to grips with their personal finance and trying to get their personal finance in order? Having something they can physically touch, physically hold, versus numbers on a screen is important, particularly people who are getting out of a pinch.
Exactly. But what they're saying is, well, back to the analogy in the pub, the thrust the machine out. It doesn't even tell you what the value is. Like, so there's a disconnect. You just tap. You go, what was that? You don't feel the money. You don't see the money. Is it even a thing? Is it even real? Whereas if you're going like, oh, hang on, like, or if you've ever gone into a pub and around the drinks and suddenly it's like 27 quid, and you sharply take a breath. You go, oh, all right, at 10, 20, 30, and you're going like, bloody hell, who ordered what there? You do think about it. You think, oh, hang on a minute, that's a bit steep. Like, but whereas if you just tap away, there's no feeling there. And of course, I mean, there's various psychologists have done various reports on it that actually there's the feeling of kind of, I suppose, the feeling of loss. It's like, hang on a minute, do I really need to spend that? So, but I think bringing it back to the cost of living crisis, the people they need access to free ATMs, obviously, that's important. Bank branch closures. Where do I sit on this? Well, look, I mean, personally, it's great that Nationwide have turned around and said that they're keeping all their network open, and they're doing this new thing at the moment where they're goading the other banks. It's quite funny. So my office is in Croydon, on George Street, and there's a Nationwide there, and they've got a poster in the window saying, Halifax is closing, why don't you come to Nationwide? Halifax Croydon is closing, which it is at the end of June. So they're doing this whole thing where they're kind of nicking each other's customers, and I'm surprised that all the banks are doing it. And I'm just thinking, Nationwide have done a great differentiator, because they're by saying we're not shutting any of them, we're maintaining our branch network. I mean, that's fantastic. Why are the others not doing that? But yeah, I mean, I don't run the other banks. But so the thing is, if you've got a business, again, we're back to cash. If you've got a business and you've got to go miles and miles to bank your takings, that's not great, and the post office network is kind of on its knees. It has lack of investment. The banking hubs, there's not enough of them. They're a great idea in practice, but we need thousands of the damn things. I mean, we lost about 8,000 bank branches, roughly. It's probably more now, but there's only, I think, over 1,000 banking hubs open, if that. I don't think there is, actually. There's less. It's not enough. Plus a banking hub, if you go there, but so one day a week, a bank will be represented. So Monday could be Barclays, Tuesday could be Lloyd's, etc., etc. But what good is that? Well, if I want a bank, no, that's a kind of a waste of time. So they're a nice idea, but I don't know, not enough of them, and yeah, that's my take on that.
The other aspect of using cash for paying for goods and services versus using cards, is the amount of money it costs to process a card payment. And a really good example is if you use an American Express card, transaction fees can be up to 8% of the value of the transaction on the American Express network, which is a more expensive network for a business to run, because American Express is a closed payment network compared to Visa and MasterCard. And the people who use American Express cards are using them because they get these points and benefits. Well, that's paid for by someone, and it's paid for by the transaction fee. So if you are trying to support a local business, you then go in and paying on your American Express. Well, you could have just undone all the good work by essentially having to charge them a massive card fee transaction. So is that where you see the use of cash as a real help for local economies?
I do. I mean, I think we need so I think I spoke to you earlier about it, the local restaurateur who his card fees were £300 one particular month, got 3 restaurants, and then you multiply that by by 12, so it could be 14-15 grand a year in fees. Now, don't get me wrong, banking cash also costs money, which I think the banks could help businesses out by actually reducing the fees to actually deposit cash, but that is another battle. There is an argument, do the banks want rid of cash? Well, we know the answer to that one. So kind of there's a war. In other words, there's a war on cash from different angles. You've got the Visa and MasterCards of this world who've got very big, deep pockets and lobbying powers. You've got the banks, some good, some bad. Then you've got the government who don't really seem to couldn't give a fig. And you think, who is fighting the corner for cash? Okay, people like me, but we just need, everyone's got to do their bit, and that includes consumers. So to think for a moment and think about that small retailer. Think about, do I really want to tap with a card to pay £1, for example? No, hang on a minute. Why don't I just take out 20 quid and just use it? So we need more education to people to say, listen, the consequences of your actions here are it's costing that small retailer an awful lot of money. they're not making any profit. You know, it's okay. The Tesco's of this world, that they can suffer all the debit card fees because of the millions of transactions. But that small little shop, you know, any profit they're making is being eroded away. You know, so people have just got to think about their actions. Go, do you know what is best for those small businesses? What is best for the local economy? You know, and as I say, shop local, shop independent. You support the little guy, and I think, you know what, by using cash, you will support the little guy. Simple as that.
My local rugby club, we were in the clubhouse after completely spanking Peterborough, may I say, but we'll skip over that. We're all having a pint afterwards, and we were paying our match fees.
Yeah.
And the club captain's got the sum up terminal, and no one's payments are going through. So I tried and do a bank transfer, didn't work, and obviously there was some issue with the banking system at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. So we all have to basically then go, oh bloody hell, how we'll have to do this when we get home. And obviously he then loses 5 or 6 players. Oh, I forgot. Sorry about that. So there's definite roles there within the local community where I think cash still has its place. Are there? Do you think that this can be driven by either a change in legislation, or it has to be driven by the banks, or it has to be grassroots up and consumers have to redemand cash? Where do you think this change is going to come to bring cash back into society?
Well, it's not going to look. The Tories under Rishi Sunak turned around and said, leave it to the free market. Labour, with the Treasury Select Committee report, they've turned around, oh, there's no danger of a cashless society. So there's no appetite in any government for a Payment Choice Act. I would like to see it. A lot of governments around the world are bringing in payment choice legislation. A lot of the states in America are doing it, and a lot of the European countries are turning back to cash. Sweden, Finland, obviously with the dangers of Russia and the aggression there, and their payment systems being hacked, or even having preparedness for emergencies. I think it was a Swedish central bank turned around and said that everybody should keep a certain amount of the currency at home in cash in case it all falls over. And as we've seen from last year's power outages and across Spain and Portugal, and the various apps go down, internet outages, beauty of cash is it doesn't fall over. It actually, you can, we can survive with it. So if we, in other words, if we lose cash, we're losing the ability to transact, to live, just for the basics. Then we've also got a situation where, and again, this is more of like a privacy issue. By just using cards all the time, all the banks and the credit card providers look at all that data they've got on you. The beauty of using cash is no one knows where I've spent that money. That's my business. And there is a real privacy issue around it as well. If I take out £50, I can spend it anywhere I like. No one. It's my business. I don't want my data monetized, as it were. Why are companies making money out of my data? It's my data. And that's the other point. There's a real privacy issue, which the beauty of cash is it's no one's business where it's been spent.
The problem with me recording these podcasts, everyone I speak to, I always find myself being very sympathetic to their viewpoints. So I now think, I should have Bitcoin in my pension, and I always find myself leaning. And I think you make good points. I mean, personally, I don't mind my data being used if I then see the benefit for it. So, for example, I interviewed the CEO of Sprive last week, which is and he, I think Sprive is an absolutely fantastic app in order to basically get that cash back to overpay my mortgage. I think is a you know, a really good product at a time where people need it. And I'm happy for my data to be used in that way, because at the end of the day, I get the benefit from it.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of sympathy to the idea, which is actually, if I am going to go and shop local, which I try, you know, actually those guys do need to be supported with cash, and that's going to be the way that they survive through periods of inflation and cost increases like we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I would just say to people, listen, just take some money out of the ATM, just use it, and just be. I want cash. I want people to be proud of cash, not like, not be embarrassed by it. Like, you know, I want. Think of it another way. Think of you know, vinyl records, right? It's now retro. It's cool to, you know, I bought my daughter a record player for her birthday and some albums, you know. How good is that? And it brings us back to being nice and slow. So you put the record on, you got to put the arm on, it's nice and slow. Whereas on Spotify, just play, skip that one, don't want that one. But you've got to play the whole album. You just put it on and then you let it go, and the sound quality is better. So I want cash to become cool again. I don't want people to be embarrassed by cash. I want them to go, be proud of cash, use cash, and not like go, oh, sorry, I've only got cash. What? No. It's lovely. We want more of it. Yes, take it. You know, and that's what I want. Cash to become cool again. And yeah, hopefully it will. You know.
I've been finishing these podcasts by asking all my guests to give their 1 minute pitch of themselves and what they do. So there you go. You've got 1 minute.
1 minute. Well, everyone knows me as I do a bit of work for Headline Money, the premier awards ceremony for financial journalists, the Oscars of the financial journalism industry. That's the day job, and of course, everyone knows that I'm the cash man. So yeah, campaign for cash. So I will keep up the good fight on cash across the UK, and it's not going to cash isn't going to die off under my watch. Simple as that.
And where can people find you?
Well, they can obviously find me at headlinemoney.co.uk for the day job. But the website for Campaign for Cash is campaignforcash.uk. So we've got loads of good stuff on the website. We do regular blogs, and of course, I'm heavily involved in the media. So, and we're doing stuff like this, great stuff like this. So, yeah. But listen, what I say to people is, get cash out at the ATM, use it, and be proud of it.